Welcome to the Truth Group. I'm Daniel, and the time has come for us to take a walk through the Bible. So we're going to start with Genesis, which is the first book. And we're going to start on page 1 because that's where it begins. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. So what I want to do here is give you the opportunity to read the passage for yourself. So what we'll do is you can hit pause, and then you can read the verse, wrap your brain around it, and when you're ready to go, just hit play, and we'll dig into it. So you can pause now. What? It's okay. All right, we got a lot of ground to cover. So we'll start with Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Awesome, Daniel. Aren't you going to tell us about the 6 days of creation now? Well, yeah, I just did. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. It's a summary statement. Think of it as a headline that you're about to read. The headline has the title that gives you the basic information, and then you read the article to find out the details of that. Of course, unless you live in today's world where a lot of people just take the title and then they run with that. Welcome to America. Now, why would I say that it's a summary? What makes me say that? Like, is it just an arbitrary thing, or is there reasons for it? Guess what? There's reasons for it. I'll give you just 3 basic reasons today. Number 1, there's the language of the Hebrew text. Number 2, there's the cross-reference of other scriptures in the Bible. And then number 3, there's the details of the rest of chapter 1. Now, number 1, the language of the Hebrew text. I'm not going to get into that right now because that can be pretty thick. We will cover it a little bit in the next video when I talk about verse 2. Because I got to figure out a simple way to communicate that on video that doesn't take like 30 minutes of dry, boring stuff. It's going to be fun. So we'll move on to number 2, the cross-reference of other scriptures. Okay, we can look at other verses of scripture and see the term heaven and earth used as a summary statement for God's creation. For instance, if you look at Exodus chapter 20, that's the famous chapter that gives us the 10 Commandments. In 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is. Now that's all inclusive. That's pretty nice. Because I don't know if you can think of anything that exists outside of the heaven, the earth, and the sea other than God himself. Because obviously God created everything. He's outside of the creation. He's outside of space, time, and matter. If you want a New Testament reference for that, we can look at Acts chapter 4. Lord, you are God, which has made heaven and earth and the sea and all that in them is. Now we can also see in Revelation 14, the hour of judgment has come. Worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. It's a good summary statement. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Today we could say it like, in the beginning, God created everything. So that's the cross-reference of other scriptures. And the number 3 reason is the rest of the text in Genesis 1. When you break that down and look at the logic of it, okay, when you get down to verse 8, it's talking about day 2 of creation. And it's talking about something that God created called the firmament. But it says in verse 8, God called the firmament heaven. Well, if you're paying attention, you'll see that, wait, okay, day 2, God creates heaven. But verse 1, he also created heaven. That could be confusing to some people. It is confusing to a lot of people, surprisingly. But also the earth. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, because if you look down in verse 10, we're on day 3 of creation at this point, and it's talking about something God created called the dry land. And it says, and God called the dry land earth. Wait a minute, he created earth in verse 10. On day 3, he also created earth in verse 1. So heaven and earth is in verse 1, but it's also on day 2 and day 3. Well, what's going on? It's so confusing. That's because verse 1 is a summary statement. Okay? But a lot of people, way too many people, believe that it's actually talking about a different heaven and a different earth. So they think God created the heaven and earth in verse 1, and then in day 2 he created a different heaven, in day 3 he created a different earth. It's a crazy thing that people dig into, but I'm going to tell you right up front, I'm going to tell you that doesn't work. In so many ways, for so many reasons, that doesn't work. And we're going to cover a lot of that as we walk through the chapters of the Bible. And it's going to be great. So stay tuned. Now, another thing to be aware of, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. Now, when I say that, you're picturing in your mind, most likely, a ball floating in space. But you notice that's not what it said. It doesn't say any shape. He doesn't say round, he doesn't say globe, he doesn't say flat, he doesn't say square, triangle, whatever. He just says the dry land. The dry land formed. So the dirt. And God called that earth. And then of course the firmament is what's called heaven. So basically he created the sky and the ground. That's a good summary. I mean, biblically you could say in the beginning God created the firmament and the dry land. But of course in today's English vernacular you'd say in the beginning God created the sky and the ground. Because that's what it is. It's the ground. It's the dirt. So just keep in mind, it's not painting the picture of any kind of shape yet. It's just telling you sky and ground. Okay, another interesting thing, the final point that I'll make in this video is a couple of hundred years ago there was an English philosopher. His name was Herbert Spencer. Now, was he the first person to come up with this? Probably not, but he's the one who's credited with it in recent history, and so that's kind of what we go with. He's a philosopher, he's an evolutionist, he's an agnostic. He even coined the term survival of the fittest. So obviously this guy's not a fan of God. He's not a fan of the Bible or anything like that. He's the exact opposite. But he came up with an interesting observation in an article called First Principles in 1867. He came up with the 5 basic manifestations of all natural phenomena. We've all heard this, space, matter, and time, but then there's also force and there's also action. So all the basic principles of the world can be boiled down to these 5 things. And wouldn't you know, when you read the very first verse of Scripture, what does God tell us in that? He tells us in the beginning, that's time. He says God, well, that's a force. That's the force. Sorry, George Lucas, but different, completely different. In the beginning, God created, so there's an action. There's the fundamental action of everything, created. And then what did he create? The heaven and the earth. So what is that? Space and matter. So in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So right there you got time, force, action, space, and matter. As articulated by an agnostic evolutionist in the 1800s. And yet there we go, we have it in the very first verse of Scripture. Pretty powerful stuff. So, is there a lot more to verse 1? Probably. But these are the main things that I know of verse 1 right now. And that's the best I can do is kind of share with you the things that I understand. That's part of this fun journey of walking through the Bible. We're going to walk through the whole thing. It's going to be wonderful. You like long walks? This is going to be a big one. So stay tuned.